President Donald Trump tweets a vote to replace Obamacare will now wait until after the 2020 presidential election, an abrupt reversal from last week's push to undo his predecessor's key legislation. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. What's behind the abrupt about-face, Kevin?
Ask leadership. And in fact, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, of course, the top-ranking official in the Senate, was a bit perplexed, according to sources in leadership office, when the president had actually come out front, Bonnie, and said that he wanted to accomplish some type of comprehensive health care reform. Now, from a calendar standpoint, the time just simply isn't there between now and the 2020 presidential election, especially amongst divided government. But the final point that I would just quickly make on this is that anticipate to hear clear health care issue during the 2020 election on both sides of the aisle.
Kevin, is this the president making an assumption that he can take back the House next time round?
I think that that's a fair assessment. I think that he would say that he believes that the House would be in play. I think that Republican strategists would have a bit of a more difficult time looking at the math in terms of how he accomplishes that, particularly in more suburban districts that Democrats were able to flip in the last cycle. But the Republicans who are supportive of the president and working on the re-election campaign would argue that the Democrats are moving way too far to the left in order to continue making those inroads. But the final caveat to all of this is that, yes, while comprehensive health care is not something that is going to be accomplished between now and November of 2020, the issue of drug pricing is something that Republicans and Democrats alike have suggested that they might be able to find some type of path forward on in a bipartisan way.
What can we expect next in terms of foreign policy? Kevin, we got that little bit of a headline last week when the president was with Benjamin Netanyahu and talked about the Golan Heights. What's next for foreign policy?
Well, NATO leaders are set to descend upon Washington, D.C., Vonnie, within the next coming days. And of course, the president has also suggested that in terms of cutting off foreign aid to a host of different South American countries, while also threatening to close parts of the border along the U.S.-Mexico border. So in terms of the unpredictability, that level of unpredictability, I would anticipate, is still going to continue.
Kevin, can I just return to the ACA for just a moment?
Yes.
Is there any understanding at this point as to what a Republican equivalent or replacement would look like? There doesn't seem to be kind of much at this stage in terms of the detail. How much detail is there out there?
Not much. I mean, I'll be really, truly honest. There's not this was what was so confusing to Republican staffers on Capitol Hill the other week when the president arrived to the Capitol and said that he wanted to accomplish something on healthcare, was that there was no formal rollout. And we saw a formal rollout with the tax plan when the Republicans successfully ultimately passed that tax plan. And so there was no rollout, there was no aggressive push, there was no flooding of the airwaves of surrogates, there was none of that. So that was a bit, it would appear, haphazardly thrown together, and now the president has since backed off.